This past weekend, there's this place near Blanding, Utah, called Recapture Canyon. And Recapture Canyon is not the name that was, it's a great name for Cliven Bundy type, you know, hey, we're going to recapture the land, but that's actually the name of it. It's an old name, probably goes back to some battle with the Indians. And the Navajo Nation has a burial site there, and there are ruins there of ancient cities, like thousands of years old. And that's the reason why, while you can ride horses through this part of the national forest or the national park, you can't ride an all-terrain vehicle because ATVs rip up the land. In addition to being loud and obnoxious and smoky and you know, pouring out carbon pollution and all that other stuff, they rip up the land. But a bunch of yahoos put together an ATV ride through the canyon this past weekend. And Cliven Bundy, whose 15 minutes of fame has by and large passed, decided that maybe he could get back in the national spotlight if he pushed this thing. And so he tweeted out or Facebooked out or whatever, emailed, you know, the deadbeat rancher, the guy who's been grazing his cattle on your land and mine. And, you know, while the Koch brothers do this, they pay, you know, $1 or so per cow per month for grazing rights. Now, if you did it on private land, it'd be $5, $6 a month, but per cow. But Cliven, you know, at least the Koch brothers pay their fees on the big ranches that they have in 3 states. But Cliven Bundy, he hasn't paid his fees in 20 years. So anyhow, he encouraged his supporters to go there. He says, we need the help we need to help the people of Blanding reestablish who is in control of this land. This is your next stand. Will you be there to help them like you helped us? By the way, please donate. It's amazing. In fact, it says, the Salt Lake Tribune reports that Lyman, the guy who is putting this thing together, Utah County Commissioner Phil Lyman, says that the planned ride aims to assert county jurisdiction in the face of federal overreach. Now, what this goes back to is that before the Constitution was put into law, it was introduced in 1790. No, it was written in 1787. It was introduced in 1790. As I recall, it was ratified in 1791, and that was the year that the United States, in its current incarnation, kind of rebooted itself, and George Washington was made our first president. But prior to that, there had been a period of about a decade where we had won the Revolutionary War. We had 13 states, and we had at least 3 presidents, might have been 4, and all of whose names are lost to history. I used to know them, and I don't even remember them. And and basically each state was an autonomous nation, and they interacted with each other through sort of a large free trade agreement. It's very much like the European Union, actually, only actually less restrictive than the EU policies. And this was called the Articles of Confederation. And so we had a country that was operating for a little less than a decade under the Articles of Confederation. And under the Articles of Confederation, the supreme judicial authority, the supreme authorities, were the county and state governments. And the county governments had the principal police authority because they didn't even trust the states. That all got it done away with the Constitution when we became a country in 1791. But these guys don't believe in the United States as it's constituted, as Cliven Bundy has famously said. He doesn't believe in the United States. That whole "we the people" thing, the first 3 words of the Constitution, forget it. We don't recognize that. What we recognize are county officials. They are the supreme officials of the land. The county sheriff is the highest level of law enforcement that exists in the United States. And which is why Cliven Bundy, made this appeal to county sheriffs across the United States to disarm federal agents. Go into your local FBI office and take away their guns because you have the authority. Apparently, nobody has told Cliven Bundy and his buddies, like this Utah County Commissioner Phil Lyman, that we ratified the Constitution. It was accepted by all the states, ultimately, and we elected George Washington as president. And we've continued since then under a new set of rules. So that's part of what really offends me. The other part is what they're doing, how they're desecrating the American.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
How they're desecrating the American Indian lands, the Navajo lands. And this is particularly offensive. I'm going to riff on that when we come back, and we'll pick up your calls. We were talking about Cliven Bundy and his buddies, going out and basically desecrating these Indian burial sites. And in my mind, this just exemplifies this mind view of what we used to refer to, and I think we should still, as the ugly American. I mean, it's the ugly American who drives an ATV through a Navajo burial site and over 10,000-year-old Indian ruins. It doesn't get uglier than that. And who says to the federal government, we're going to ignore your having set this land aside because it's sacred to these people who are still alive, by the way. We're going to ignore your having set this federally owned, publicly owned land aside so that you can only travel through it on horseback. We're going to ignore that, and we're going to take these ATVs, we're going and just, rip up the land. This is about as asinine as it gets. This is about as ugly American as it gets. What kind of bizarre mentality produces this? The whole thing, I just find the whole thing mind-boggling.